Hello everybody, my name is Ian Lamont and this is another Amazon deep dive segment for publishers, this one on Amazon advertising. And this is part of a series of presentations about different aspects of Amazon for publishers, how they can use it to expand their business and find new opportunities. One disclaimer that I give at the beginning of each segment is I don't work for Amazon. This is based on my experience. What you experience may be a lot different depending on the programs that you're using and the terms of service and how they evolve. I always advise people to follow Amazon terms of services and know that just while there may be a lot of opportunity to find new opportunities, it's also possible to lose a lot of money. So let's get started with a little discussion of organic versus paid search. You may have heard these terms before, but I'll go over them again. And organic is the idea that when you search for something, let's say Ford Explorer in a service like Google, the Google algorithm will naturally return some results on the page, and they will be ordered in according to whatever the algorithm determines are important factors. And that's usually things like how often people search for the term, how many links are inbound to that particular term, and other factors like that. So you can see at the very bottom of the page, there is a blue circled page, which is actually Ford's official page for the Ford Explorer. So that's the top organic search result in Google. And that's a good place to be. You don't want it to be somebody else's page or like maybe a news article that's saying something bad about the Ford Explorer. Now above that though, there are 4 other links. They're all highlighted in red, and these are paid results. That is, these companies, including Ford, but also local car dealerships, they have paid to have their links show up at the top of the results. And there's 4 of them. Not every term will get this type of treatment. In other words, some terms you search for in Google, it will only be organic results. But for heavily competitive areas or areas where it's possible for companies to make a lot of money, they're willing to pay some money to get their results at the top of the search engine. So just like Google uses it on their search engine, Amazon also uses paid and organic search results in its own search engine. So the blue ones at the bottom, those are the organic search results when I search for genealogy in books on Amazon. And you can see there's a bunch of them. And actually, it turns out, if you look closely, it says 1 out of 16 of over 50,000 results for books in genealogy. So that means there's a lot of books out there that have something to do with genealogy, and it's showing the first 4 or 5. Actually, they're showing 16 on that page. Now, above that, though, there are 2 results that are paid. And actually, I paid for those results. Those are my books and my products showing at the top of Amazon's search engine because I decided to pay extra money for it. Those are 2 different types of ads, and I'll get into that in a minute. But it's important to understand that nowadays, when you search on Amazon, you're likely to see paid results at the top. This wasn't always this way. This changed maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. But this is what's going on right now. And publishers have an opportunity to take advantage of this program. And by the way, it's not just on search results, it's on the detail pages on Amazon. So this is one of my books, Genealogy Basics in 30 Minutes by author Shannon Combs Bennett. And the red highlighted box there, that's a paid advertisement. Somebody paid for that little box to show up, maybe not necessarily on my page in particular, but Amazon is generating it there and placing it there. So if somebody clicks on that ad, Amazon will get a little bit of money, and potentially the person who clicks on it will decide to purchase that particular product. And paid really is all over Amazon right now. So, if you go to a detail page and scroll down, oftentimes you'll see like a carousel, and this, like at the top, it says customers who bought this item also bought these particular books. So those are the organic search results. It's showing the books that people are most likely to buy after buying my book, Genealogy Basics in 30 Minutes. But then there's another carousel right below that saying sponsored products related to this item. So all of those books right there, it looks like there's about 10 of them. Somebody paid for those books to show up on other people's listings. And actually, there's 2 main programs that publishers and sellers will run into when they're using Amazon advertising. Sponsored brand ads, and that's the sponsored brand ads are the ones at the top. They used to be called headline search ads, and then below that are sponsored product ads. And actually, the sponsored brand ads, the idea is you get 3 product slots on the ad. So I'm showing off the hardcover and paperback edition of my book, Genealogy Basics in 30 Minutes, plus I'm showing off one of the other genealogy products that I sell. It has a headline and it has a picture. So that's a picture that I have, which we actually used in the book, that I decided to use for the sponsored brand ad. Nowadays, when you run these ads, though, you have to have a logo somewhere on that picture, just as an FYI. Below that is a sponsored product ad. And this also showed up in search. So you can see I searched for family tree and books, and then this ad showed up, my ad showed up right at the top. And you can see it says sponsored there. So that's meant to tell people that this is not organic search results. And by the way, sponsored product ads can show up in other places on Amazon too. So here are the sponsored product carousel ads. These are the ones I showed you before where I marked them off in red. So sponsored products related to this item. I've highlighted in blue my own book, which is showing up on the right side of that. But these other books are also showing up in the carousel. And you can actually see that some of them have some extra creative. For instance, this Excel book says, learn how to master Excel formulas and functions in no time. Whereas other ones, like this Excel dashboards and reports for dummies, it doesn't have extra creative. And so my message here is when you're creating the sponsored product ads, you have the option of whether or not you want to use extra creative materials in the advertisement. And by the way, the ads you create using the sponsored products program, they can also show up on Amazon's app or its mobile website. And this is important because nowadays, especially during the holiday time, probably about half the searches on Amazon are using the Amazon app, like for iPhone or for Android, or the mobile browser version of Amazon.com, which displays results and displays advertisements differently, but it still displays them. So, sponsored by EasyGenie, archival quality forms for genealogists. This is an ad I paid for. It looks different when you see it in a normal browser, but on the Amazon mobile application, I've kind of blown it up a little bit. It just shows the picture and the creative headline. And if you tap that, then it will show the 3 products that I'm trying to advertise. And then over here, we have sponsored products related to this item. This is another ad that I paid for. Plus, you can see some other folks are also paying for sponsored product ads that are showing up on the mobile application. Okay, so what is Amazon advertising? I've shown you what the ads look like and where they show up, but what is the actual program? So it's a self-serve ad platform. Self-serve means you do it. You don't hire somebody else to take care of it. You actually take care of it. So you're registering and you're logging into this service, and then you are creating the advertisement. And I'll show you some assets you'll need to create the ad in a little bit. Now, they may show up on Amazon.com on a normal-sized browser, like on a laptop or desktop computer, or it can be on the Amazon app. And I think that Amazon will probably be extending these advertisements to other websites, that is, partner websites, not their own websites, relatively soon, because there's clearly an opportunity there. It's a CPC model. And when I say CPC, I mean cost per click. That is, every time somebody clicks on one of the ads, Amazon will get a little bit of money for it, and the person who, or the company that placed the ad, they have to pay some money. That level of payment will depend on how much they bid on the particular ad or keyword that they created, and I'll get into that in a little bit. It's different than a CPM model, and M means 1,000. CPM means cost per 1,000 impressions. That is, on some, for instance, some websites, news websites, they charge CPMs, not CPCs. And the idea is the news website says, okay, if I show your advertisement 10,000 times, the CPM will be, $1. And if it's shown 10,000 times, it means it would be $10. So they're charging for the number of times it's shown, not the number of times the ad is clicked. And you can see that there's some variation in what that will achieve, because CPC, the idea is I want people to click on the ad so they see the detail page and they can buy my product. CPM might be more useful if you're just trying to brand something, like establish a new brand, or maybe advertise something that doesn't really need to have a click right away or an actual purchase right away. And with the CPC model, you set your maximum bids and budget. So I might say for all of the keywords that I upload to my Genealogy Basics in 30 Minutes campaign, I'm willing to pay 50 cents per click. maximum. So the way that Amazon's system works is sometimes it'll be 50 cents, but actually a lot of the time it will be a lot less than that because it depends what other people are bidding. And naturally, if people are bidding more than you, you're less likely to have your ad show up on Amazon. So Amazon doesn't tell you, what you should be. Actually, I should take that back. Amazon does suggest what level of bids you should have, but sometimes I don't quite trust those suggestions. And in fact, sometimes when you're creating an ad, Amazon will show a default level to use, like default bid $1. Well, that's convenient for Amazon for everybody to be bidding $1, but it's not convenient for you. So I advise, being thoughtful when you start to use different bid levels and experiment and see what works and what doesn't. Okay. And why use Amazon advertising? Well, the first reason should be very obvious. You go to the head of the line. You're the top result. So I just told you there might be 50,000 books about genealogy in Amazon.com. Well, when I set up my advertisement, my book will show up at the very top. It'll show on page 1 at the top above the organic search results. And that's a huge, huge benefit. You can target people who have intent to buy. And I mention this because on Google, you may want to target people who have intent to buy, but a lot of the time the people who are searching on Google, they don't have intent to buy. And the same thing with Facebook advertising. People go to Facebook to see what their friends are posting. I think that's the number one reason. They don't go there to buy a book about genealogy or anything else. And they might be interested if you show it to them, but it's not really clear that they have an intent to buy. Whereas in Amazon, they do. DIY. This gets back to the self-serve aspect of Amazon advertisements. You don't need to hire anybody to do it. However, you do have to have some baseline smarts to be able to use it, or at least be able to figure out how the interface works. You can measure the results of campaigns, and I bring this up because for a lot of advertising and marketing programs, you cannot measure the results of campaigns. In fact, if I put an advertisement in a magazine or a newspaper, there may be no way for me to determine if the sales that take place after that advertisement appears have anything to do with the newspaper or something else. So this is a big advantage that a lot of these online services have, is they can show you the results of their campaigns. So I say it's possible you can still find some bargains. And when I say bargains, I mean low-priced keywords that you can bid on. So when you go to Amazon advertising to bid on a keyword, the minimum bid is 10 cents. And honestly, I think if you're bidding at 10 cents, you're probably not going to get a lot of quality clicks on that. But if you're willing to spend a little bit more, I think there's actually quite a bit of potential, at least right now. So in other words, instead of spending $1 or $2 for on your bids, you can actually spend less than 50 cents on a bid. And I think that's a pretty good thing. And just so you know, Google used to have an advertising program. Actually, it still does. It has a program called AdWords. Same idea as Amazon advertising. And when it first started, the clicks were super cheap. But now, 15 years later, the clicks are very, very expensive. And in fact, I rarely spend money on Google advertising anymore, just because the margins on my products are so low and the clicks are so expensive. But for Amazon advertising, it still works, at least right now. You can choose how much you spend on a campaign. I think there's a minimum of like $1 a day, but what this means is that you don't have to be spending hundreds of dollars every day on an advertisement. You can just make it, $2 or $3 or $5 or $10. And then you can also set when the advertisement expires. So for instance, I just created an advertisement for one of our books, Home Buying in 30 Minutes, and it's springtime right now. So I set up the ad to play for the next 45 days or so, and then it will end. So it's really targeted at people who are buying a house in the springtime, which is the normal situation in the United States at least. And then you can do things like you can fine tune your campaign. So if you discover something's not working, you can tweak the bids, or you can change some other aspect of it, add keywords, etc. You can do split testing. So let's say that you have a headline, a sponsored brand ad. You can try 2 different headlines and see which one works better, and then just use that one more. And then this is super important. You can directly compete with other titles, meaning if you have a competitor in your publishing business, let's say that you publish romance novels, and you know that there's another publisher out there that kind of targets a similar audience, or they have a similar approach to the types of books that they produce, you can actually go into a campaign and use those titles, the competitors' titles or the competitors' authors, as keywords. So all of a sudden, you're competing with, the other romance publisher. This is pretty interesting to me because Amazon, if you're creating keywords for the book itself, like you're using Amazon KDP or another service to publish your book on Amazon, you're not supposed to use the names of competitors' titles. They're pretty strict about that. So the way it works, pretty simple. You sign up for go to advertising.amazon.com, or you use some other service that offers Amazon advertising. So for instance, Amazon Seller does have a way for sellers just to create advertisements right in the Amazon Seller area. They're basically the same as the ones that you get from advertising.amazon.com, but sometimes not all of the same ad types will be available to advertisers. You select the ad type. So I just told you the names of two of them. They're sponsored brand, sponsored product. There's something called product display. I've heard that may be going away, but I'm not sure about that. And then there's another one called lock screen ads. For publishers, I haven't had a great experience with them. Maybe some publishers will, but I've had a lot of success with sponsored brand and sponsored product ads. You choose the book or the product you want to advertise. You select how they're targeted. So sometimes you can use keywords. That is, people are searching for a keyword and your ad will show up. Other times you can actually specify the products where you want your ad to show up on, like on their detail page. And then you can also choose by categories, which may work for some publishers, but not all. You have to upload additional assets. So if you're using a sponsored brand ad, you may need to upload a photo or your logo or whatever. You enter your bids and your budget, and then you enter the timing. That is when the ad starts and when it ends. And that's particularly useful for seasonal type advertisements, so holiday period, or like I just said for one of my books, spring buying period. And this is the Amazon advertising sign-in page. You'll see at the top right, there's a link to sign in, and then there's also a link to register. So if you haven't done this before, just click register and follow the instructions to get started. Note that you may not have access to all the different ad types that I've described. I think you'll probably have access to the sponsored brand ad, but you might not have, sponsored product ad, but you might not have access to sponsored brands. All right. So one thing that's important to do when you're creating advertisements, it takes me about 5 minutes to create a single advertisement using their little interface. But one thing I always do is I prepare some assets first that I can just basically copy and paste them right into the ad. So the one on the left is an Excel spreadsheet, and this is for one of my genealogy products. And you can see I have, it shows 15 different keywords. Keywords can also include phrases. The total list is actually more like 100. And I've heard of people that are using, keyword lists with like 1,000 keywords in them. People get really excited about the different possibilities for using different types of keywords. On the right is just a list of some taglines that I can use in the advertisement. And I might use these taglines elsewhere too, like in social media or whatever. But if I just have them in a scratch pad, like a text document, I can just copy them and then paste them right into the interface. So once you've logged into Amazon advertising, you'll see something like this. This is kind of the dashboard for creating ads and also for monitoring them. And the first thing I'd like to call out is the Create Campaign button. So you just press that button to create an ad, and it will walk you through the steps of selecting the ad type, saying how much you're willing to bid, giving a name to the campaign, uploading keywords, and so on. Below that are some other data, and it looks kind of imposing and cool, but I just like to caution people that some of the data that Amazon presents to advertisers is a little bit misleading. And I'm going to call out two things in particular: the sales figure and the ACoS. I'll explain ACoS in a minute. Sales should be obvious, but it's not your sales. It's not the revenue or the net revenue that you're getting from Amazon. This is Amazon's gross. So that shows, like in the past 30 days, I've sold on Amazon nearly $7,000 worth of goods, but Amazon hasn't taken their cut yet. And this also doesn't exclude the money that I might have spent on advertising or producing the book or whatever. So this number, you have to take it with a grain of salt. And ACoS likewise. That means the advertising cost of sales a lot of people use this as like a a benchmark for whether something is successful or not successful. But as I'm going to show you shortly, this number can really lead you down the wrong path. So it's like a very general guide. It's not. It should not be used as like a yes/no type of thing for your campaigns, and I'll explain why in a minute. And then to the right of that, you'll see a number that says impressions, more than 2 million. So that means I've spent $1,400 about in the past 30 days for 2 million impressions. But what I'm really interested in is actually the amount of revenue my company is going to get for that. So I pay very close attention to the spend number, which is right here, and also the net revenue that I get from it. These two numbers here, I'm a little bit skeptical of them. They're like a guide, like I said before, they're like a guidepost, but they're not. I don't think they should be used as a measure of definitive success because they're excluding some important information. If you scroll down on that page, you'll see your campaigns are listed, and there's some controls you have here. So right here, whoops. Let me just go back. Yeah. So right here, it says active. If I toggle this slider, that would basically turn off that particular campaign. It gives you some information about what type of ad it is. SB means sponsored brand. How I'm targeting it, when it started, the budget. So I'm spending $25 per day on a maximum on this particular campaign. And just an important thing to note, it rarely goes above that. I think it can in certain scenarios. Amazon has some fine print about how it actually works, and there might be some scenarios where you will spend a little bit more. But to be honest, usually I spend far less than $25 per day on that particular campaign. During the holiday period, it changes though, because more people are searching, so the ads are being shown more often. And then if you go further to the right, you'll see other types of numbers, and I'll go through what these all mean. Impressions, clicks, CTR, which means click-through rate, spend, that means how much you're spending on a particular campaign. So this line here shows I've spent $367 for the Easy Genie HL genealogy campaign. CPC means average cost per click, 33 cents. How many orders I've gotten. So just so you know, orders doesn't mean units. It means how many times an individual account on Amazon has purchased one or more of my books. Typically it is one, sometimes though it is two. This is sales. Again, this is Amazon's gross. It is not my net. And then this ACoS figure, which I mentioned before, can be a little bit tricky. Okay. If you click on a campaign, that is, if I clicked on this Easy Genie HL genealogy, I'd see something like this. Whoops. And basically, it's a list of all the keywords I have going. It shows a different match type, which means basically Office 365 exact. That means that people have to type in that phrase exactly, Office 365. Whereas if it's phrase, it means that Office 365 has to be part of the phrase, but it doesn't have to be the only thing. So if somebody typed Microsoft Office 365, this particular keyword setup would be triggered. It shows how much I'm bidding on each one, and you can see the numbers are different. It says suggested bid, and Amazon has some ranges down here, so I can switch that around if I want. But you'll actually see that I'm bidding a little bit more than the average range that they're suggesting. How many clicks I've gotten for that particular keyword. CTR, click-through rate. This is a really important number. It shows of the people who see the ad, what percent click on it. So I have a click-through rate of 4%. That means if 100 people see an impression, 4% will click on the ad, which is great. I consider anything above 0.3% to be acceptable. So this is way above that. Compare that with the one below it. Very few people click on it, like 0.07% click on it. Nevertheless, I've still gotten one order from that particular the group of people that are clicking. How much the spend? That is the spend for that particular keyword. Average cost per click, and these are high. I'm looking at this right now and I'm thinking, geez, 74 cents per click. And, it's great that I've converted at least one person to a sale, but it's actually I'm spending $4.46 just to get one sale, which the gross is only $7.99. What I get back is actually going to I can just tell by looking at this that I'm probably losing money on this particular keyword. So I might want to change that later on. And there's a couple other missing data points, which I'll explain in a minute. So here's a brief glossary of what these terms mean. Budget means your maximum spend per day. Impressions, how many times your ad appears, like on the screen, which might be a mobile device or it might be a browser. It doesn't mean that they're paying attention to it. It just means it shows up. And then Amazon will track who's actually clicking on it and charge you for that. Clicks, how many times someone clicked the ad. That means you'll pay for it. CTR, as I said before, click-through rate. If you have a low click-through rate, that might mean that the keyword and the advertisement don't really match up that well. So I showed you the Office 365. Let's go back and take a look. I showed you this keyword here, Office 365. It has a 0.07% click-through rate if people use that term exactly. So that means that when people are, I think that this book that this campaign is for is PowerPoint Basics in 30 minutes. I think that this tells me that people who use the term Office 365, very few of them are interested in PowerPoint. That's why the click-through rate is so low. However, for PowerPoint for Dummies, note that that's a competitor's key phrase. It's actually very high. So depending on which keyword you're using, that will set up the expectations for what's going to show up in the results, and that will also affect the click-through rate. Getting back to the terms here, spend, how much you spent in a specific time period, either for a campaign or for an individual keyword. Successful orders, not units, just orders. Sales, again, Amazon's gross sales, what Amazon is taking off the credit card of the person who placed the order. And ACoS, average cost of sales, or advertising cost of sales. The term is has been kind of fluid since I started using it. And I think nowadays there's a different definition for it. And here's the ACoS column. And Amazon calls it advertising cost of sales. The amount you've spent on a campaign divided by total sales during the campaign run date. So let's say that you have a campaign, you've spent $100, but only 23% of, you've earned, the gross sales are $100 and you've spent $23. That would be an ACoS of 23%. And you can see that it varies on this particular page for different types of keywords or campaigns. Now, let's get into what the problem is. So let's say that I have Amazon gross sales of $200 for a product and I've spent $90 on it. Amazon would show an ACoS of 45%. And this says average cost of sales, just replace average with advertising cost of sales. So maybe that $200, it generated 300 ad clicks, 10 sales. It's for a $20 product. So my gross sales will be $200. AMS, that is Amazon advertising, the cost is $90. ACoS equals ad spend divided by gross sales. That gives you 45%. But again, you're paying for Amazon's cut. You are paying for that. Amazon isn't paying for that. And a more accurate representation would be is if the Amazon's cut was removed from this particular figure, which would give you a different perspective. So let's say that Amazon's cut is $50. So it's instead what your net is $150, and you've spent $90. That gives you a different perspective on how successful the campaign is. And let's also keep in mind that Amazon is leaving out several pretty important metrics, and Amazon gives you some very useful metrics: how much you've spent, how many orders or items you've sold, the click-through rate, and as I said before, 0.3% to 1% is okay. Over 1% is great. If it's less than 0.3%, as I said before, it could indicate an issue with expectations. Like people are searching for Office 365, but they're seeing an advertisement for PowerPoint Basics. So that's kind of the expectations of the user and what they're seeing don't match up. Or there's some other problem with the advertisement, which could be something to do with the product itself. So like if you're advertising a book with only one-star review, people notice that. So people are less likely to click through to it. This is a quote that I got off of the New York Times recently. And this person said, if there are no reviews, people won't click. If you have a product that dips below 3.5 or 4 stars, your advertising cost doubles or triples. To get the same amount of clicks, you have to do a lot more advertising. And the idea is, so if you have let's say you have that 1-star book and you're trying to advertise it, well, because the advertisement will show it only has 1 star, people are less likely to click on it. So you have to spend more to get more clicks to get more sales. So that I'm just using that as an example of why it can be difficult if you have a problematic advertisement to actually get successful sales, and you'll end up spending a lot more. So the Amazon gives you those numbers on the left. Here's what it doesn't give you, which I think are super important. First is the conversion rate. That's the percentage of clicks leading to orders. So let's say 10 people click on the ad and 2 of them end up buying the product, 2 orders. That's a conversion rate of 20%. That's really, really good. Anything over 10% or maybe 8 or 9%, I consider that to be great. If it's less than that, it indicates it could be a problem with the detail page. So something's wrong with your pictures or the cover or the title of the book or the reviews you have or some other aspect of it. And then the amount of spend per order or item sold. So let's say that I spend $50 on a particular campaign, and I sell 5 items during that period, or let's say 5 orders, and each one of them is for 1 item. That means the spend per order is $10. And if my profit level, if I know the profit level for my products is about $5, and I'm spending $10 just for a single order, that means I'm losing a lot of money on each order. And that's when it's time to maybe cancel the campaign or lower the keyword bids or do something else to optimize it. Fortunately, for those 2 types of data points, the conversion rate and the spend per item sold or the spend per order, you can generate them yourself. And I'm going to show you how. So this particular spreadsheet is actually the data I've downloaded from Amazon for all my campaigns over a particular month. And you can see it has all the regular data: budget, impressions, clicks, CTR, spend, etc. But I've highlighted 2 special columns that I created in the spreadsheet that show the spend per order and the conversion rate. So these are, as I said, these are important data points to have. Amazon doesn't give them to you, but you can generate them using a spreadsheet. Now, of course, you have to know how to use a spreadsheet, but if you've used Excel before or Google Sheets, this shouldn't be that hard. So the conversion rate, Amazon's already giving you the impressions and the clicks. So you just do, impressions divided by the number of clicks, and you'll get the conversion rate right there. For the spend per order, here's the spend, here's the number of orders, simple division will show that up, and then you can just kind of autofill it all the way down. And if you don't know how to use a spreadsheet, fortunately, there's lots of resources to learn it for free. I actually have resources which show how to do this online. Just go to in30minutes.com, and then at the bottom of the page, there's a link for videos. Click on that. It'll go to my YouTube channel, and look at the Excel or Google Sheets tutorials on how to do this stuff. It's not, it does take a little bit of time to learn how to do it, but once you do it, you can start to generate these types of data points. Now, one thing I want to show, so here I've done the spend per order and the conversion rate. So I can start to go through and I see, oh, this campaign is doing great, 15% conversion rate. This one, not so much, only 2%. And in fact, here's one I want to call out. Easy Genie headline genealogy, and I'm going through the different data points. So I've spent $13.79. I only have 1 order. So my spend per order is $13.79. Cost per click is pretty low. Conversion rate's terrible. It's 2%. Interestingly, it says there's a 36% ACoS. So if I was looking at ACoS, I'd think, oh, that's not too bad. But hold on, conversion rate's terrible, and the spend per order is really bad, because I know that even though I had 1 order and I sold $38 worth of goods, so I can tell right away that this person this order they bought 2 items. So let's say that it cost $13.79 to sell 2 items. My profit level for each item is $5. $13.79 divided by 2, that's about a little under $7. So I'm losing money on each one. So after I see this, I'm almost certainly going to go back to that campaign and see, first of all, if I'm overspending on some keyword, or there's some keyword that's generating lots of clicks but no sales, and maybe turn that one off, or maybe turn off the whole campaign altogether. So it's really important not to pay attention to ACoS so much, which may be leading you to a totally different conclusion, but rather your spend per order, your conversion rate, your total spend, your click-through rate, things like that. And this is just blown up so you can see them a little bit better. Okay, problems with Amazon advertising, I've alluded to them already, but couple things to note. Yes, there's a steep learning curve. It's DIY, but if you've never done it before, it might be a little bit unusual when you start going. And by the way, if you go to leanmedia.org and click on videos, that goes to my YouTube channel, and I have some videos that show how to create an ad. You need to tend the ads, and what I say is Amazon advertising, it's not fire and forget, like you create a campaign and you just kind of walk away and it does its magic. You actually have to pay attention to each campaign, make sure that it's watered, and you pick out the weeds, and you do other types of tweaks so it stays optimized. And then maybe if it's not working out, like maybe you plant this thing and you discover it's an invasive species or it's dying right there in its spot in the garden, you just have to rip that thing out. So you need to tend your ads just like a garden. I think customers are learning to ignore the Amazon ads, and it used to be a novelty on Amazon to see these types of ads, but I think now they're saying, oh, hold on, this is a sponsored product carousel. I'm not going to pay attention to that because it's not what's naturally showing up. So over time, I think that's going to start to impact the effectiveness of ad campaigns. And this is a kind of a high-level negative aspect of Amazon advertising. It's pitting we publishers against other publishers, maybe against ourselves. So let's say that you're a publisher of genealogy books. Well, now you and I are competing, and we're bidding on the same keyword, and we're paying more just because we're trying to compete with each other. And Amazon loves this because we end up paying more money, but it may not be so great for us because maybe we won't get so many sales, or we don't have enough money to spend on campaigns or whatever. ROI, return on investment, it's going down as bids go up and effectiveness declines. And I said ACoS is kind of like a general guidepost. When I first got started with Amazon advertising, the ACoS for my campaigns was typically around 11%, and now I think it's around 23%. And yes, I've told you before that you shouldn't pay attention to ACoS for individual campaigns, but on a general level, I think the fact that the average ACoS has gone from 11% to 23% in the course of 3 years or so. That's a bit of a worrying trend, because if that continues to go up, it just means that campaigns are costing more and they're less effective. And as I mentioned earlier, Amazon doesn't give you all the right data. So the spend per order and the conversion rate, you have to generate that yourselves. It's doable, but the fact that it's missing is a little bit concerning. And then you can end up wasting a lot of money. And sometimes, I've taken a break from maybe I've gone on vacation or I'm busy with other stuff, and I don't check my garden, and then I come back and I discover that I have these ad campaigns that are just blowing through money. People are clicking on the ads, and my costs are going up, but no one's buying stuff. So you really have to stay on top of it, because if you don't, you can lose a lot of money. And another thing you should know, if you set up your ad with no end date on the ad, that is, it just keeps on running and running and running, and you're not paying attention, you can run through thousands of dollars in a year just on a single campaign. So you have to stay on top of that. And then, at the end of the day, I always think that great organic search ranking beats great ads. So, even though I've had some success with some of my ad campaigns, I'd much prefer if my organic search results were at the top of the search for those terms. For some terms they are, but for many terms they're not. So I need to use Amazon advertising. And then also, great ads won't fix your book that has problems. So if you have a bad cover, or if you have a bunch of one-star reviews, don't blame Amazon advertising that it can't turn the sales around or make everything magic. This is something that you have to work on. Maybe change the cover, or work on getting better reviews, or just maybe work on the book itself. There's some fundamental problem that you need to address. This comment came up from somebody who was looking at sponsored products ads, and he said, the problem is that they're not actually good for customers, they're good for sellers. More specifically, they're good for sellers who are good at advertising and bad for everybody else. So there's a nugget of truth about this. If you're good at these advertisements, you can do pretty well by it. And if you're not using Amazon advertising, you're probably missing out on some sales. But I wouldn't blame the platform or the advertiser for that, because this is the way that advertising works, not just on Amazon, but elsewhere. Like when you go to the supermarket and you're kind of strolling around looking for things to buy, those items that are on the end of the aisle, the so-called end caps, either the distributor or the manufacturer is paying for their products to show up there. So you're more likely to see it, and you're more likely to buy it. And other types of promotions too, like if there's a coupon in the supermarket circular, well, somebody's paying for that because they want they want their product to kind of get in front of your eyeballs, and that's exactly the way that things are working on Amazon advertising. It may not be the best product, but it's the product that the people who have some money and are willing to spend a little bit of money on marketing it, they're the ones that are going to be more likely to get the sale. That was Zach Kanner in his essay, What is Amazon? So that's the end of this particular segment for the Amazon Deep Dive. I have more Amazon Deep Dive for Publisher segments available at leanmedia.org. You can also follow me on social media at those addresses shown on the screen. Thank you so much for watching.